Greetings, everyone. This is Yoftahe Mulatu Gabru from the Yoftahe Show on a Saturday program. I am greetings to all. I have amazing guests today just to discuss about what 2021. We all left 2020 with so many different it could be headaches, struggles, but how we start 2021 is going to matter on what kind of reflection that we have to have on ourselves. So we're going to talk about that. And then I have two great guests, Dr. Karella from Germany and Dr. Bikat from the US. We'll have a few discussions. But before we get started, what I want to say is, like everyone, please share the Yoftahe Show that you're going to be able to see it and each platform that you have. And also from YouTube Live. And any question that you have, just like everything else, we're going to take at the end. But before we get started, I want to say thank you for everyone. And then let me start introducing our guests. Dr. Karella, if I start with you, if you can tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll jump to Dr. Bikat after that.
Well, first of all, hello. And thank you so much for having me on your show. I was quite touched, to be called up from all the way from the US. I live in Germany. I'm a pediatrician and I grew up in Addis. I'm Marinya, but it's been a while since I worked in Amharic. I haven't worked in Amharic ever, actually, because I left Ethiopia when I was 16. I had a scholarship. That was what they did at that time, to get scholarships, which led me to to Hungary. I had a scholarship to study medicine in Hungary. And after I finished the studies, I ended up in Germany, where I live now and have been ever since. So I'm a pediatrician. I have my own clinic, and I work with children and families because we have a lot to do with parents. And I have two best-selling books in Germany called Secret of Healthy Children and The Secret of Resilient Mothers. That's translated in English, but the books are not out yet in English, but they will be sometime soon. So I developed a program I call the Beneficial Thinking Program, which I had a TED Talk on a couple of weeks ago. That was the end of last year in November. So you can find out what the beneficial thinking method is about if you click on that talk, which is a TEDx talk from Germany, from Tübingen. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Karella. So we're going to talk more about the beneficial thinking also in detail in another program. We'll do that, but we will touch up a little bit on here. We'll be able to let you know also where to find Dr. Karella, how to follow her. Please make sure to click on her TEDx talk and comment and let her know what you think about that. And Dr. Bikat is not new for the Yoftahe Show. Welcome again. Thank you very much for taking your time and joining us. So for those who don't know you, if you can tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I am Bikat. I'm a clinical psychologist. I work in Cleveland, Ohio at Cleveland Clinic. My specialization is health psychology, which means I work with patients with depression, anxiety, stress related to their medical problems. So that's really what I do. And I like psychology because it's a profession that helps you change, that helps you grow, that helps you cope with challenges and stresses. And definitely a profession that helps you to continue to be a learner. It's it helps you gain insight about how you can always overcome challenges, approach things in a new way, and so it's a fascinating field, and I really enjoy what I do.
Thank you, Dr. Bikat. So before we get started on the show, as I promised on the last video that I did, I have the gift that I promised everyone. When I say everyone, and I'm going to challenge everyone, this is the gift that all of us should have in 2021. A lot of you have given so many. I asked all of you to guess, and then I have like very creative guesses. One of them that I loved and I was laughing about it says vaccine. Unfortunately, it's not the vaccine in here, but I know we did a program on the vaccine. I know coronavirus has affected so many of us in it. Some of you have said hope. Some of you have said Bible. So many examples that you have said it. Peace, serenity. I wish I could fit all peace in here, but I'm going to give you a clue what's in here so that you still have the chance to guess a little bit. It's Michael Jackson has sung about it. And what's in here You all have guessed it by now, I'm assuming. It's a simple mirror. Man in the Mirror is the song that I was reflecting to that Michael Jackson has written. And one of the chorus, if you remember all, says, I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways. And no message could have been any clearer. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make a change. This is an impact that I'm hoping every child, everyone around the world can hear and focus on ourselves. When we look in that, gaze in that mirror on ourselves, I'm not going to say we have all the answers, but most of the answers that we are looking for from the world is really sitting in by reflecting on each other, on ourselves. So I like the idea that we can grow best our self-reflection. If you want to make, like you said, if you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself. We are the change. You are the change that most of the time that we are looking for. So today could be our attitude or thinking we want to, I mean, before we change the world, we have to have that changes and recognizes who we are and send that message to everyone that we have to have. So with that, with the Man in the Mirror song, and I have two doctors, like I said in here. So the cost less than $10, but it gives us so much reflection because the world has to offer before we try to save anybody in the world. We need to start with ourselves and save ourselves first. And then we'll do more of that. So with that in mind, today, the title of the, we said, what is stopping you? The one thing that's really stopping you is you. So if we can start with that, and then Dr. Bikat, let me start with you. Whenever we think about the subject itself, what's stopping you and why we need to have even this discussion. Actually, before we get in there, there's always a question that I get asked in your profession. All of you, both of you, I'm going to ask you the same thing. What you do, you already mentioned. What does it take to do what you do? And then I'll ask Dr. Karella the same question, because there are some kids sometimes email me and said, if I want to become a psychologist, if I want to become a neurologist, if I want to become so-and-so, what are the steps that I need to follow? So if you can tell us a little bit about what you did in order to have the knowledge and then the education that you have. So Dr. Bikat.
Thank you, Yoftahe. So to become a clinical psychologist in the United States, usually you go through an undergraduate degree, a 4-year degree in psychology. Then you do a master's and a PhD, a doctoral degree. There are 2 types of doctoral degrees in clinical psychology. You can either have a PhD or what they call a PsyD. PsyD is a doctorate of psychology. It's a shorter program. It's more clinical focused, less research. And then, after you go through this altogether 8-9 years of education, you graduate, but then you also have to do a postdoc training to be able to get licensing in clinical psychology. So you get 2 years of postdoc licensing, and then you can, specialize within the clinical psychology field. You can become a health psychologist. You can become a pediatric, work with, children. You can become a trauma therapist. You can become, like I said, health psychologist, which is in the medical field. Some specialize more in, marriage, family counseling. They become marriage therapists. You can become an addiction psychologist. There are just so many different fields clinically that you can practice, or you can become a teacher, you can become a professor, or you can become a consultant for different professions. So for anyone who wants to become a clinical psychologist, the training is, arduous. It takes years, and it can feel overwhelming or exhausting to go through the training. But once you graduate, just opportunities are limitless, and it's really a rewarding field in terms of just what you get from it. You work with patients sometimes, and you just really enjoy to see people grow and change and recover, and psychologically and emotionally it gives you a lot of satisfaction. So that's pretty much what it takes to become a psychologist.
Thank you very much. Dr. Karella, same thing. What does it, as a pediatrician, what does it take, especially in Germany, which is a little bit different also from the US or the Ethiopian curriculum type of thing? So what does it take to become what you do?
Well, it's pretty much the same. You go through an educational program that we call med school. which is, I think, more or less the same. I don't know how the system is in the US. You probably have a bachelor's and a master's and you become a doctor afterwards. But there's a batch called medical school. It's usually 6 years. And then you do a postgraduate and you do the specialization, which takes another 6 years. So 4 years actually, but I spent 7 years in the university. So after I actually studied in Hungary, and I got my doctorate degree in Hungary, and I took that degree, did the exams in Germany, and entered the University of Cologne, where I worked for, I think 6 years, yes. And I could get then I had an exam, passed that exam, then become a specialist for pediatric work. You become a pediatrician and juvenile doctor. So you've got not just the kids, but the youth too. And then you can decide whether you want to stay and do research or move on to become a professor, or you want to go on and open your own clinic. And I decided to do my clinic. So I've been in my clinic for over 20 years now.
Okay, thank you. So let's get started. Dr. Bikat, let me come back to you. So the title itself, when we discuss it, it says, what is stopping you? When we reflect on ourselves, what does it mean? So what are you trying or hoping that people will get out of this message that we're going to discuss? What is the importance of this? Because everybody talks about different goals. Everybody tries something, but we always feel stuck, and then we don't really move out from that stuck position. So what were you hoping that people are going to get out of this program today?
So we're hoping that our participants, ourselves, I think this conversation will inspire us to think about improving ourselves, growing as a person, achieving our goals, and why we can't achieve what we want. So one of the things that primarily we need to be aware of is our approach to growing as a person, self-improvement. Our thoughts make a huge impact in terms of how we approach this self-growth and self-improvement, because many times, let's say one person does something remarkable. We see someone achieve something big. Some of us, get inspired. We want to, be like that person, do something that big, or maybe, change our goals a little bit, think, a little bit bigger. But other people think more, okay, there are those people who can succeed, who can grow, who are talented. It's not for us. Our thinking is that I cannot be that person, or I cannot get that done, or I cannot change. So we think there are special people who can, go to school and achieve, education, or get promotion in their job. So we assume that we are not, as good or as talented or as resourceful to be like these other people, that we put ourselves in a separate category, that we, have to live with certain limits. And so looking at those barriers to our growth, our change is very important. And other people might think, well, we don't have to try. Why do we even have to grow? We're comfortable where we are. Yeah, we're struggling. We know that our health is not in a good condition, or financially we're not in a good place. We don't mind to have a better job, but we don't even think, why is it important to grow, to make progress in life, and understanding the benefits of growth, a better life, finding out your passion, finding out realizing that it's a good thing to grow as a person, become better financially, better in your health, because then you can live a life even for other people. You can help others, you can touch other people. So you, instead of living in that survival mode and meeting our basic needs, financially, people say, living paycheck to paycheck, people can, be educated and get better jobs. And, there are so many resources, especially in the Western countries, in the US, the sky is the limit, they say, if we are willing to grow and to allow ourselves to come out of where we are and allow ourselves to change. So our attitude towards growth, towards change, just makes a big difference in looking at, why do I limit myself? Why do I think I can't do better in life? Why do I think this is really the limit for me. In exploring those barriers, I think is so critical to achieving growth and improvement.
Okay, thank you. We'll divulge in all of those and break it down and make it more in depth. So before even going into depth, and Dr. Karella also, if you just in summary, and then we'll break down as we go with the questions. But for you also, just if you did a quick summary, what are you hoping people are going to get out of this? Why is it even important to have this discussion right now?
Well, I think we're living a life right now that's quite a challenge for a lot of people, especially with the pandemic that's going on right now. So you tend to feel that you don't have much hope, and you become anxious about the future, or I don't think anybody's actually in a good state right now. Whatever they're doing, they're in some form of mixed up feeling, especially with you guys out in the US. You've got such a turmoil going on right now. And well, this is part of life. So the question is always, just how can I make my life good for me? It doesn't really matter about what people think, what is good and what's not good, but how can I live a life where I can get up in the morning, feel good about what I'm doing, move on to the next day, go to bed in the evening, have a good night's sleep, which is part of a good life, pay my checks, pay my dues, and see to well, I'm a mother, so I think about my children, or maybe if you don't have children, you think about your future. So what actually happens is that if we just concentrate on that in a certain way, then we can get on every day and move on and find that we do grow, actually, because we are, as human beings, and because I work with children, we are curious little people when we're children, and we grow up and lose that curiosity, lose that feeling for life that has been given to us because of a lot of other things that happen to us on the way. So it doesn't really matter how old you are or which place in life you have. We just have to live this life. And what I think we're discussing today is how can we do it best so that we end up having more pleasurable feelings, more success, more acknowledgement, and of course, health. So I think that's the topic we're going to talk about today.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, we have viewers. We can ask take questions at the end. People from hello, Bethany from Virginia, Konjo from Maryland, Reina from Greece. We have Amanda from Ethiopia, Mekdas from Ethiopia. So we have from all over the world, people have joined, and then we welcome you. Thank you very much for being here. What I ask again, please share and comment, and then we'll divulge into the questions. So Dr. Bikat, back at you. So before, in this time, just you both mentioned it, the question is, what is stopping you? Everybody has a goal, everybody has a dream, but sometimes we don't know how to evaluate even where we are. So when someone says, I've hit a wall, I'm not making progress, I'm stagnant, I'm moving just in loops, just feeling stuck. So how do we evaluate ourselves, and where do we find, call it, or even if I can ask it in general, what are the common reasons for getting stuck? What do you feel like?
So when we think of the word stuck, I think it's good to think about, feeling dissatisfied in our lives. Are there areas in our lives that either hurt, we are not happy with, that needs to be fixed? There is something wrong. And then, or there are areas where we are dissatisfied. We can be better, but we can't. We have these passions, we don't know how to get there. We have these desires, we don't know how to get there. So how can we overcome, those areas in our lives? And I think it's good to think about, like I said earlier, areas of growth. When we think about, for example, achieving a certain goal, we can have this fear that if we try, we're going to fail. And if we fail, then other people will look at us, it will be shameful. And this fear is not really about ourselves, but it's about other people, that, other people will criticize us or look down upon, we won't be accepted, we won't be approved. Or it comes from a self-esteem issue that, as children or early in our lives, we were not encouraged. You can achieve, you can, get to this dream. And so these thoughts need to be first evaluated. Why am I stuck? What's getting in the way of me achieving these goals, and how do I need to approach that? So this self-evaluation or self-examination can happen, in the beginning of a year, like, we in the US, in the Western world, we are in 2021. We just started a new year.
Yeah.
And many times, those milestones help people to make that evaluation. It's good to do an inventory of, what are the areas that I like to be better, it hurt me, or it's not going well, that needs to be fixed. And then what are the areas I want to even grow and even get better? I'm not satisfied with where I am. And then kind of you break that down into specific goals. Usually it's good to also think about obstacles. What are my obstacles? I have these goals, and what is keeping me from getting there? You write a list of those obstacles as well. That's really the first step. Or, you can do a daily evaluation, a daily self-examination, like the mirror example. You look at yourself and ask, how was my day today or yesterday? And now, I'm in the beginning of another day. I have this entire full 12 hours ahead of me. How do I want to use it for the best of my needs? Or how can you use it to the best of my abilities? There are, different people you can read about, inspiring, successful people, like the former Apple CEO is known to get up every morning and ask himself, if today was my last day on earth, how would I live this day? So that type of evaluation, what do I really want to achieve from this day? And then you write a list of things you would like. And even if you don't write it down, you always have that mindset in the beginning of the day. You have a specific set of goals, and those little goals are the ones that's going to help you in, getting into a life that makes you satisfied or unstuck.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bikat. Dr. Karella, following up with the same thing that what Dr. Bikat just summarized. And sometimes I think people, when we talk about being stuck or not knowing exactly how to move, it is we have this lack of purpose in life, or not really understanding our why. So if you can a little bit elaborate on that, how do people, what is purpose, and how do we find our why?
So I'm actually a person who always says, don't ask why, ask how, because I think that's what moves you on. This question about why is always a very tricky question that doesn't really help you very much. It gets you muddled up in your past. So to begin with, we all have to understand that we have this life to live, and so we have our own individual purposes, and you have to start to understand that the purpose that's good for the other person is not your purpose. You have to sit down and ask yourself, what do I want? And this is where it gets tricky, because a lot of people don't actually know what they want. They want to be like him or like her, and they have role models that they want to follow, and they try very, very hard to get to the place where these role models are, which is not going to work, because we're very, very individual in our brains. Our brain circuit is very individual. It's depends on how we've lived until now, depends on our culture, depends on what we know, and of course our strengths too. People have different strengths. So to begin with, the first question was, why do we have to move on? Because Dr. Bikat just mentioned people who are comfortable with what they have. They're quite thankful and grateful, which is great. It's a great thing to be grateful. It's a great big thing to be happy and go from paycheck to paycheck. The problem is, though, there's one very important definition in life. If you don't move forward with life, you get stuck and you stay behind. So there's no other choice as to move on, unfortunately, because we would all like to stay where we are. You have to move on. There's no choice. And if you don't do that, you stay with your paycheck number or whatever it is that you have a constant life. It'll be fine for a while, but you get to a point at some point where you get used to what you have. You're not going to be satisfied, or you're going to want more, and you're not going to get more because you haven't done anything to get anywhere. You start getting unhappy. So you get stuck, right? And so what we have to understand is being stuck is part of life. You get stuck all the time. It's like, if you want to do anything you want to do, you start first with being stuck. That's what happens to me every day. You get up, you want to do something comes in between, you're stuck. And sometimes this being stuck somewhere becomes a big thing. And you're not stuck in a small way, but in a big way. So that's when you have to stop. And I think our brain is actually made to solve problems. But what we have to understand is, as long as we're in this stress situation where we say, I'm not feeling well, I'm stuck, I'm anxious, which kind of gives you a downward spiral on your stress system. this will stop you from finding solutions and moving on. So we have to find a way of solving this anxiety and thinking. Stop worrying, but start thinking and make a plan. What is it that you want? And how do you think you can get it? And if you don't know how to get it, ask. And that's what we call learning. That's what we call moving forward, growing. And growth just means nothing other than, you're not going to grow bigger. You're going to grow in your brain. That means you're going to have more ways of finding solutions for your problems. That's what growth means. So it's actually nice to grow because it makes life easier. And everybody is capable of growing. So define what it is what you want, or how, and think about how can I get it? How can I get this done? Whether you want to study, get a job, cook a dinner, or do the washing, whatever it is, small things, and there are big things. But the first thing you have to do is define what you want. You have to start thinking, and that's also the fun part of life, to start thinking about how to get there. And this how is something that each one figures out for himself.
Thank you. I think with this, just to elaborate, I'm going to ask you a similar question for both of you, because sometimes, for me, there was one word that Tony Robbins always says: if you're not growing, you're dying. So I really take that to heart. And then I try to do something different, something stronger that I can learn throughout the years. That's going to make me better from yesterday. But there is this thing that we call comfort zone. So if we can just elaborate a little bit on comfort zone, I'm going to ask you a similar thing. What is a comfort zone, and then why is it sometimes people just choose to stay in that area that is, like the word says, a comfort zone? So why do people stay in the same situation? So Dr. Bikat, what is comfort zone for you, and what is it we need to do in order, or how do we shake that comfort zone?
So when we think about comfort zone, it's an area where we feel comfortable, we feel familiar, we don't feel challenged, we don't feel afraid. And so if someone comes and challenges you to try something new, that's going to bring up a lot of emotions. Oh my God, I won't be able to do that. What would people say? Or I've tried before and failed. I'm going to fail again. My effort is going to be, wasted. And in general, our approach to challenge is, we just don't like to face challenges because it takes, effort, it takes energy, it takes hard work. It's figuring out how to get out of that place, like Dr. Karella was saying earlier. We don't know the how. So it comes with intense emotions try to get out of that comfort zone. But the thing is, when we stay there, we feel even more comfortable. It's warmer. Whereas the way to get out of a comfort zone is you try just a little bit of an effort to do something that's out of your comfort zone. And then you see that it didn't kill me. I succeeded. There was a lot of emotional reward. People want to just keep trying to get out of that comfort zone. I think, if it's a small example that can describe this is when I was an undergraduate student, I had a friend. We study at night in the library, and then we take breaks. We go to a nearby coffee shop or even a gas station where they sell like cappuccinos and things like that. So we go and get, our favorite cappuccino. So the next day, this American friend of mine wants to go to a new place and try something new. Whereas I liked it the last time I tried it, so I want to go back and get that same thing. And she used to tell me that if you just keep doing that, there will be a lot of things you haven't tried in life. You're just staying comfortable, with what you know. What if there is something else that you can even like better, but you haven't tried? And eventually, life has given me that opportunity to try to get out of comfort zone, face new things. We're taking a risk. When you get out of the comfort zone, you might not like it, you might fail, it might not work out. But you become willing that there is no, they say comfort zone is a good place, but nothing grows there. So for you to be able to make progress, you have to be willing to get out of that. And I think to add one more thing, maybe, I think Tony Robbins also mentions that growth mentality and fixed mentality. Some people by nature, they just want to stay where they are. They don't think about growth. It's more fixed mentality. Whereas the growth mentality is when you face a challenge, some people like that. How do I, instead of saying I can't do this, they always think about how can I get this? How can I do this? There is that courage to try something that is challenging, and you do that, you have a positive outcome with a small effort, and then you can keep trying, doing things in a new way, growing, expanding yourself, and learning to try more and more things out of your comfort zone.
Thank you. A similar question to you, Dr. Karella. So the personal perspective that you have on it, what is comfort zone, and then why is it most of us like to stay in that area?
It's just comfortable. That's why we call it comfort zone. It's lovely. Before we got on this call, I had I was watching a movie, and I just thought I don't actually ever have time to do this on a Saturday afternoon. And it was very cuddly. I was on the sofa, and I just had to kind of push myself to get out of it. Comfort zone is wonderful. That's why we call it comfort zone. Unfortunately, you can't stay like that. You have to move on. And I think the difference is, though, that like Bikat said, there is a point where you just have to just get out of it. And we keep pushing that point. We keep pushing it until we can't push it on anymore, until life makes us change. I mean, that stresses us, because everything that's new, everything we need to learn in life to move on is work, like you said. It's work, and we don't like to do work. Our brain is very comfortable, actually. And so if we have something that we have to do that we don't know how to do, it stresses us. So that's when we start feeling uncomfortable. We start feeling not unwell, and we start getting tense. And we'd rather just go back into that sofa and watch the movie on, but you can't. Life doesn't allow that. So we don't have a choice. Like I said, the one thing that we all have to remember is that we get older, and comfort zone leads to uncomfortable illnesses if we get older. If we don't get up and move our body, we don't get up and start reading, we don't get up and change our habits, our brain gets tired of it. So it's a bad game. You get comfortable, but you get tired of being comfortable too. And that leads to stress, and this stress causes you to become sick. So we are made to grow in a way that we challenge ourselves, get new ideas, and move on. But even if you don't want to do it, some things eventually come up in your life. It's going to make you have to change. So the thing about growth is it's better if you do it yourself and not wait until something forces you to do it, which is eventually going to happen anyway. And I think it's better to be prepared.
Thank you. Just like Dr. Bikat and Dr. Karella said it, that comfort zone, like I said, the word is very comfortable, and that's why we want to stay most of it. But progress equals happiness for me. Like we just have to do something different. And then sometimes there is this little voice all of us have in our back of our mind that telling us, but sometimes we ignore it. We don't really listen to it. And I don't want to wake up one day realizing my productive life has gone because I did not listen to that voice, and I want to be unstuck and I want to move on. So we will talk down the road what does a goal setting means in detail, but it just comfort zone, nothing grows there, just like Dr. Bikat said. So we just have to challenge ourselves and look at ourselves in the mirror and said, am I happy with where I am? And what is it that I need to do in order to change it? So in all of this, we all are different personalities. So in order to get unstuck, one solution that we are giving today is not going to help everyone. So Dr. Bikat, if I come back to you and say, how do we know that personality? How do we know what works for me? And where does that lie, our personality differences? How do I recognize that? And then how do I work with that?
So when we think about growth and achieving goals, making changes, health finances, making improvements. One personality difference in psychology is people with internal locus of control, and there are people with external locus of control. So the people with internal locus of control are the ones, they face a problem, usually they put the burden of responsibility on themselves. I have to figure something for this problem. So the doctor didn't help me, they didn't give me the right medication for my illness. They find another one. They don't sit and just complain about this doctor didn't help me. Whereas external locus of control people, it's always the other person that has a solution for my problems. It's the other person's responsibility. They don't rely on themselves, or they don't think they have the answer. It's always the other person. And so with psychological studies, there is more depression on the patients or the people with that external locus of control, because if you have a problem and you think the answer and the solution is with other person, it's the doctor or the bank or this other your family members, then you're stuck. You can't solve it because the key is not with you. Whereas the internal locus of control person, despite the response from the outside, parties, they still go back to themselves. Okay, this doctor or this medication didn't help me. Let me try a natural. This didn't help. Let me try this one. So they're always coming up with solutions, with answers, because they think of themselves as the primary person. And I think adapting that mentality that, I have it in me. I need to find the right resource or the right person to help me. I can do this. That strong self-esteem, that strong reliance really helps people with getting to a point where they feel more successful, more satisfied.
Thank you. Dr. Bikat, coming to you with all of this, Dr. Bikat also has mentioned it. So Dr. Karella, if I can come to you, with everything that we do before in order to get out or get out of the comfort zone or understanding your personality, there is a common denominator. I think all of us have the unknown or fear of the failure and the unknown that is really always keeping us from growing. And in the US, I think there was when they did Gallup teenagers, the fear of being a failure and not succeeding in life was a number 4 that was stopping kids from not doing anything, not living a measure, not measuring up, and having that fear of that becomes so paralyzing. So how do we identify fear or define what fear is in this whole self-growth that we are talking about?
Well, fear is something that we learn when we grow up. But you're not born with fear. There's very few things that you're born with that's fearful for you, like height. But actually, you learn what things are, what value they have growing up. So restrictions in your childhood, cultural restrictions, familiar restrictions, in the book where you're being parented, your parents taught you things that are okay and not okay. You grow up with these things and you carry the fear with you of how you grew up, right? So in some rigid cultures, there's a lot of fear and a lot of escape from that fear. And some cultures are more open. When we get back to what Dr. Bikat said, that you have some people who know where the location of their determination in life, that they say they're their own cause of whatever happens and look for a solution in themselves. What we try to do is that we try to teach everybody to gain this character, to learn not to depend on the outer world and to tell themselves that the outer world is responsible for what's happening, but ourselves. And we know that most of the time it's not just the fear of not succeeding, but it's the fear of the unknown. Mostly it's if you want to indulge in something, you never get there at once. There are lots of steps you have to go through to get to where you want to get to. So when we talk about goals, you don't become a psychologist in a day. It took 9 years, I think. It took me, I've been working for over 20 years to be able to say what I'm saying now. So to begin with, we always have to understand that it's a fearful trip in when we do something new. And it's a fearful trip with the shame that we might get because we said we're going to do something. But also, on the other hand, we can consider it actually as quite something that's exciting to venture into. So it's the thoughts that we have about things that we do are essential to success. So if I understand I want to do something, things that I want to do to achieve, then I have to, first of all, understand I can only do this if I find an excitement in doing this, or at least a pleasure, and just develop some form of some form of positive attitude toward that things that I'm going to do, because that will get me out of my fear zone. That will get me out of the stress zone that's stopping me from doing these things. You will never get anything done if you don't feel at least neutral about doing it. If you're going to go and do something and you're not feeling good about it, it's not going to work, because your brain is in a stress mode. You don't think then, you just try to fight it. So first of all, if you want to do something, there are two things. And one thing is trying to change yourself, which I think is a very difficult thing to do. You could always start up by telling yourself you're just great, and not think of changing yourself in a way, but changing a habit, which makes it easier for you to change things. Because if you start working on yourself, we have this nature of loving ourselves, and which we should do with everything that we have in us. There's actually nothing wrong with us. It's just that we just have to get things done. So I don't actually think there's anything wrong with anybody and they just have to manage to do the things they want to do, and then they'll be fine. So the definition is important, and the fear is something you grow up with. So I think as a psychologist, probably tell me fear is one of the very difficult things, anxiety and fear, that, you can get rid of when you need to go and get yourself help. But every normal human being has these emotions. Yeah. And we're not talking about people with anxiety disorder right now. And it's normal to have this fear. It's normal. It's part of life. So then again, you have to start saying to yourself, I want to get this thing done. And this thing needs to get done, but it takes a while to get there. There's things that are going to stop me. And every time you get stopped, you have an obstacle or you have fear. Just take a moment, take a rest, and then move on again. Just don't stop.
Thank you. So if we can make it like as a personal example, for both of you, similar question, what is it in life? Could be school or anything else that you have went through that you felt like this is so hard, I am stuck, I cannot move on. And then what did you do, or what helped you at that moment to get unstuck and move on, to move forward? So Dr. Bikat, if I can start with you, if you can just give us an example that may have happened in your life that you were saying at that moment, this is impossible for me, I cannot get out. And hindsight or whatever, what worked, what helped you to move forward?
I actually, when I was thinking about this talk, I was thinking of a friend who, her story might be so inspiring for people to hear. It was when I was in Ethiopia, and she was taking this matric examination, which we call it matric, 12th grade examination, that your score allows you to go to college in Ethiopia. So she got a score that didn't allow her to go to the university the first year. So the second year, she was telling everybody that I'm studying hard, I'm going to college. The next year, I'm going to get a 4.0 GPA. I'm going to be, working so hard. And this examination, as you all know, is very difficult. So, she studied, she would talk about it. So the examination, the score came out. She did not get the 4.0 that she was telling everybody that she was going to get. And this is her second time. So I met her around that time, and I asked her, how did you feel? You were so positive and you worked so hard. And she said that same day, she got her books out and she started studying again. And I think it was the third year or the fourth year, she was able to get that 4.0 GPA and be able to go to this university. And she succeeded in that university. She became a professor, and she also did, a lot of research. She used to tell us, she would put a book in her head and she would pray, God, I want this book to get into my head. I want to learn it. And she would talk about how even if when she's not studying for this exam, she would not let a day pass without reading a book. Like if she would feel like a failure if she allows one day go by without reading, something, learning something. And she actually finally she got a scholarship, and I believe she is, I think, in the United States right now. And just that type of determination and consistent, perseverant effort, believing in yourself, just working so hard and not giving up, I think it's so important. And, I can, think about my graduate years. It was the same thing. There were years where, school and, there are so many requirements. You have to do research, clinical work. A lot of people dropped out of the program because it just feels impossible to, to keep going to complete your training. But I didn't see any, this is my passion. This is something that I always wanted. And, there were some people, as a foreigner or a second citizen in the United States, how are you going to help individuals with, psychology? You're not from this culture. But I would tell people, I would still be satisfied if I complete my degree, even if I don't use it for education. And so I think that perseverance, not hearing other people who can be discouraging, just, trusting yourself and just being so focused and working so hard, I think can get you to where you want to be.
Thank you. A similar question, Dr. Karella, if you reflect back to your life or whatever, that you have found something challenging, and what do you think that you used during that moment to get you, call it, unstuck and move forward? If there's anything that you can share in there, or you can share like another inspiring story from another person that you may have seen what they did.
Oh, well, my whole life has been a big challenge to, right at the beginning when, with the war that I had to leave Ethiopia when I was 16. I just think that was a challenge to begin with. And then you go to a country like Hungary where you have to go to university and study a language that's like completely different to what you grew up with, speaking English in my case. You have to go to university, do everything in Hungarian after a year of preparation, which is quite difficult. And you always get told you're not going to make it. You get used to it. And so what you learn when you grow up is that everyone's going to tell you it's not going to work. You get used to that. So that's lovely, actually, because you don't have that challenge anymore because it's normal. And then you move over to Germany, another country, the completely different language and culture. So what keeps you moving is that you don't actually think about the outer world when you do things. You just focus on what you want to do and get it done with, and stop listening to the outer world, who's always discouraging you. I think throughout my life, one of the biggest experiences that I had, I could be very proud of, we talked about that, are these two books that I published in Germany. And they're in German, and they become both bestsellers, like a New York Times bestseller. It's a Spiegel bestseller, which is when I first decided to write a book. Everybody tells you it's not going to work. You're not very good at German. You're not good at writing. It's not going to work. So you get a kick out of that. You kind of get excited when people say it's not going to work. So you start saying, well, that's a good idea. Then it's probably going to work, because if you keep saying it's going to work. So you kind of get a habit of becoming successful, which is great. But something I really want to share with you is something that I think has been the biggest challenge of my life. Is my husband is German, and he likes to ski. So I decided about 10 years ago that I think I want to try that too. Talking about not getting out of your comfort zone, which is really difficult, because when you are out on the ski slopes, it's very cold, and usually you stay in a hotel and they have a nice, comfortable room, and you don't want to get out of there, especially coming from a country where we all grew up in, which is nice and warm and cozy. And this is a completely different culture. When you get on the slopes and you get to an icy slope, and I always get to a point now, since I learned to ski at a very late age, I am not an expert, so I still get stuck on that slope. And you get to a point, and this happened to me a couple of weeks ago. We were out over Christmas. You get to an icy point, and you just don't want to move further. But you're on a slope, and it's very icy, and you've got to get down that, so you're not going to spend the night there. And you know that. So you stand there, and you just tell yourself, and I think these moments are so amazing because they're very exciting. You just talk to yourself and say, Karella, you better make that turn now. And Karella says, no, It's just stands there and say, I'm not going to do this. You say, yes, you are. You've got friends down there. When are you going to come down? And nobody wants to ski with you because you're always getting stuck. So you tell yourself, oh, I'm going to move on. And no, you're not going to move on. Yes, you are. So you just take a deep breath. And you take another deep breath and you calm yourself down. And well, I got down. That's why I'm talking to you right now. I'm not on that survey. Time in life. And what you just have to, but whoever's watching should understand that it gets exciting when you get older to get stuck. Because what becomes a challenge becomes like a football game, probably, or any game that you like to play. You try to get that ball out of wherever it is to wherever it has to get to. So it gets exciting and you start losing fear. And the less fearful you are, the better you get at these games in life and the more you get accomplished, which is really, truly lovely.
Thank you. I want to build on that, and I'm going to stay with you and I'll ask you the same question right now, Dr. Karella. You mentioned in this conversation, and I'm glad that you are unstuck. You came down from that iceberg, but you're here to talk to us. So we are very happy with that. But with all that conversation that you talked about, which is very personal, that I can understand, you have so many people surrounding you that say you can't do A, B, C, D because of their experience. I don't want to call them negative. Maybe that's all they know. That's all they can share. So the mentality, what I call the crowd, and there is a saying that you are the average of the 5 people that surround you, rub shoulders with, and then that tells you who you are and how or where you can go that far. So in this kind of environment where we can make a choice who we want to be with and who we want to surround with, how important do you say, and I'm going to ask you a similar question, Dr. Bikat, for you, choosing your crowd and picking the people that you surround with. So what is the definition, the crowd for you, or how to pick the people that you surround yourself? Dr. Karella, for you.
Okay, well, the thing is this, you cannot survive without other people. And one big chapter in my book is the networking fact that when you live in a country, make sure that you have friends, or make sure that you meet the right people. And you always get disappointed in people, or you always get, joy with people. This is what people are like. There's one clear thing that we humans are not capable of doing, is getting things done on our own. So you need a network. So if you try to write a book, you first of all put down your ideas and try to find people who are in that area who can help you. You start reading about books, and you start researching, you start finding out about how to do these things. And these people who you work with, is my mentality, my choice in life, share a path with you. So they become more or less, they turn out to be your friends in a way. And friendship is a definition that everybody has for themselves. But people who are with you would want to help you to grow, will never put you down. So if you have people who constantly tell you things won't work, you better avoid them, because it gets on your nerves after a certain amount of time and you get tired of it. Don't be upset at them because they don't know better. Fighting with people is a very bad thing to do. It's actually quite a waste of time, because you never know if you might need these people again. So we have to understand that living with people means having your benefit from them in a friendly, human way, and the other way around. And that means at the same time, you have to give also some of your experience and knowledge and friendship and love. And it's this give and take that makes you grow. And I learned that from my father, who was a diplomat. Probably you don't know, but I'm half Ethiopian. My mother's Ethiopian. My father was Indian. He used to work in Ethiopia. And as a child, he used to travel a lot and worked with the government at that time. And I remember he was very, very friendly. And he told me, you know what, friendship is valuable, more valuable than money, because it's those people who make you grow. I learned that at a very young age. So when I came to Germany, I was very friendly to everybody. And of course, you actually don't have to listen to any of the bad things that they say. You could just ignore it. And this is getting strong, means kind of not taking notice of anything that's been said that's not good for you or negative. And that will keep you strong. It will make you become a bit immune to bad news or bad comments or negative things, because I always say if you are a friend, don't criticize me. Tell me how I can grow. Tell me good things. And people do not grow if they're told how bad they do things. As friends, we think, you know what, I'm your very good friend. I think I better tell you that you're not doing something right. I just think it's wrong to do that. Don't tell them what they're not doing right. Tell them what they can do better, because that's what makes you grow together. And so we have, maybe in our culture or whoever, we just think maybe it's proper and right to tell people that they're doing something wrong. It's better to tell them what they could do better to get in a better way. So avoid people who keep getting on your nerves.
Good, that's a good point. Dr. Bikat, let me come with the same kind of similar question, but just like Dr. Karella said that you don't have to listen to the negative ones, but you need people. It's a give and take. You have to offer value. They have to offer value in there. But in all of this, sometimes who we pick, who we are with, and then we start comparing ourselves to those people around us or to whatever we pick to. So we have to be very careful who we compare ourselves and then how we want to grow in life. So how do you, whenever it comes to comparing ourselves to something or someone else, what advice do you have when it comes to comparison?
Yeah, like Dr. Karella said, relationships, networking, having a strong support system is so critical for our emotional health, for our development, for our career advancement, for any area of our lives. Relationships, friendships are so important. But we have to nurture these relationships. We have to make an effort, not just, like we talked about earlier, growth doesn't happen. We make intentional effort. We also have to work on developing a better networking system, get out of our comfort zone. For example, many of my Ethiopian friends that I know stay within the Ethiopian culture when they think about relationships and friendships. But, having people from outside of our culture, for example, we came to the United States, having people from within the culture is going to really be important in helping us learn about the culture, learn about different professions. So our goal is, let's say, to become, an exercise or dietitian. You want to make connection or friendships with that type of person who can give you information, who can put you in contact, who can support you if you're applying to a program like that. So being very intentional in reaching out to knowing the type of people that can help you, enable you, empower you, it's so important. But also it's learning how to live with other people. Sometimes people can inspire us. We see other people doing better than us in some areas, and we can use that to help us adapt better values. But sometimes if we also subconsciously just automatically want to be like other people, compare ourselves or compete with other people and feel like we have to have what other people have, in the US they call it, keeping up with the Joneses. You see your neighbors do something, you keep wanting to do that subconscious tendency to be like other people or do what other people do. That can also be dangerous. So if we look at the good side, jealousy, they say if it's influencing you to do better things, it's good, right? If we see someone doing charity work and we say, wow, I want to be like that person, I want to give, I want to help others too, we're learning a new value from other people. So that's a good way of, being jealous at another person. But if we're just compulsively, we see other people doing something and then we automatically want to do that, then we don't have a goal, we don't have our own plan. We see something that someone else is doing, they went to college, I want to go to college too, so I'm going to drop my other plans and automatically do what other people do. Then that's not healthy. Or this other person had a better job, I want to apply to that school too. Like we subconsciously, compulsively get into this competition. We feel like we have to have other people have, then that's dangerous. So sometimes it takes actually being different from other people, being willing to other people to call us weird or different, because you don't want to just live for society, you want to live for your own values and goals. So it's good to be careful not to just live by other people's standards or expectations. Sometimes, there are cultural expectations. Everybody has, this type of car. I need to get that car too. And some people, honestly, they live by that need to, have what other people have. Sometimes it can come from inferiority complex. Unless we have what other people have, we are not successful, or there is something wrong with us. And those type of mentalities are just so dangerous. To have our own passion. So if school is our goal, you go about that. You are focused on that. Whether other people think, her hair is messy or her car looks bad, or, it's an old car, then that's okay. When I was in graduate school, I had a very old car. I graduated and I was doing postdoc. I had a better salary. I had this 93 Toyota Corolla that, I drove from Kansas to California and Michigan. And my friends would say, just for our eyes, get a new car, get something better. For me, my drive was, succeeding. What gave me joy was learning or, achieving this course. I wasn't even thinking about what kind of car other people have and what I have. I wasn't even aware of it unless, people always bring it up to me saying, why are you doing this? You need to get a new car. But sometimes that's what it takes to really, stay in our lane, because eventually once you're done, you pass those hard days and you have something good, people then admire what you did. But the journey takes, it's okay for other people not to, say, wow, she has a nice car, or, it's okay for other people to criticize us. Just, focus on your goals, and that endurance is going to be very important for success. So it's knowing how we can use other people, for inspiration and empowerment, but also sometimes it can be, a disadvantage too. So knowing when to use this, the social system for our advantage, and knowing sometimes society can have a negative impact too.
What I think is very important, if I may say so, is that this so-called peer pressure that you have in a society or a certain culture will kind of drag you back, because you're not going to make up to it. And what makes us different now is that we're grown up, we're not children. And when you grow up and you live in another society as the one you've been grown up in, you can't carry on doing what you've been doing. So I think a very important thing that I have learned in my life is to begin to understand that human beings are all the same, whether they're from one country or from another culture. And if you really want to have a good life, you have to mingle with different people and understand their way of thinking and apply it and mingle it with yours. And so what you become is another third person. You're not what you grew up in, and you're not what you are in right now. You develop into an individual. So it's not very advantageous to always stay in the same peer group. If you want to be free of the peer group pressure, you have to change your peer once in a while and go and mingle with others and understand the thought path of the others. That will make you grow.
Thank you. I think with both of you, what you have said, I want to read what Almaz just said. We should live by our own values and be selective of what our takeaway is from other people's value. So understanding, thank you, Almaz, for that comment. And so we all have this definition of success. How do we find our own, Dr. Karella, if I can stay with you, with what you just said, just to develop a little bit more. Success has different meaning for all of us. My success is not yours, or the Dr. Bikat and things like that. So how do I find within me what success, or how do I define, what is the definition of success for you?
Well, you're successful in many ways. You are successful maybe as a parent, and depends on what your needs are. A success means getting something I want and I need and having it done, or doing the job that I have to do. So we start off with success when we're children. We learn to walk, then we learn to read and write, and then we learn to grow up. And then what we generally as human beings think is success is maybe getting an education, but that's not for everybody. There are other people not educated but have another job. I think, though, education is something that's more or less surely going to get you a better life. That's why we indulge in education. And then you start working. And then when you start working, there are different jobs, there are different forms of work that you have. And the question is, how happy are you with what you have and what would you want to do next? So like I said, there's always this question, what is next? Because you get older, and the older you get, life becomes a bit more, I wouldn't say difficult, but you get more challenges in life. So it's better if you think about it and get it done with in an early stage, and think about, have a more or less of an insight of what's going to come up. You get health issues, you get financial issues. Even if your children go up and leave the house, they have another second generation issue that you're going to have to deal with. So it's about, how can I live my life in a way that does not make me upset, sick, unhappy, unconsciously depressed or anxious? How can I move on, have a comfortable life with myself, my children, and my fellow citizens? And that you need to do something about that. And that's what we call work, right? So the first thing I think for a lot of people is the way they use their job, their work, where they earn money with, and how they combine it with their life, with the friends and family that they have. And I don't actually like that thing that we call work-life management, or life work booster, quality, value, whatever, because I think as long as you're breathing, you're living. So you live every moment of whatever you do, and that's life. So work is part of your life, and you spend quite a lot of time there. So I think success for me means having a pleasurable way of dealing with all of it together and moving on with it. And I think it's good to have your goals too, to move on and think. I actually have every year, at the end of the year, I kind of think, what is it that you want to get done next year that you haven't done this year? So I think that's also what the beginning of the talk was about. How do I move on to the next thing? And it's good to have a vision. That means it's nice to visualize your life. And we all grow up, want to become a princess and have a lovely life, which is very good, but it's not going to work the way we actually thought it would work. That's when you start getting disappointed, and you get stressed through this disappointment. So if you want to avoid that, and you have to work on yourself and have a clear idea of what you want to do. And that's very individual. I had a clear idea. It's very lucky. And maybe this is an advice I can give to parents, or to, if you don't know what your child wants to do, if you don't know what you want to do, start doing something and start moving on with it. Because when your brain gets to do something and enjoys it more, the easier it gets, the more you enjoy it, then it becomes a job. And if you're good at it, it becomes a profession. And if you have a profession that is good and that other people can live off, has a value for the society, then you start making money with it. You can sell your profession, your knowledge. And I think that's a circle of things. That's how it works.
I think you just hit a point, and then maybe Dr. Bikat, I can ask you also on this. Once we define success, what's for us, and then sometimes what we try to push on our kids sometimes can be very, very stressful on our kids. So I just want to make sure that, because you brought that up, I want to touch that point a little bit. Especially as culture from Ethiopia or Eritrea, we have this tendency what we want our kids to be, and that's only paths that we want them to follow. And then we don't let our kids grow, or with their imagination, with their knowledge, with their gift that they may have. So I just want to sideway a little bit, because Dr. Karella put in a good point on it. What advice would you give to our community to make sure that our kids come in with their own personalities, not just about reflecting or becoming a clone of ourselves, or sometimes having I hear say, I want them to have what I didn't have, and then we forget even what we have sometimes could be important for them to have. So how should we manage the expectation for our kids, or without pushing them to, sometimes they may divert into negative way if we push too much. So any advice that you want to say on that?
Yeah, I think, when you think about kids or other people, who need advice about career decisions, our tendency is, I know what's best. I want to do this field. We know what is good for us, but we don't know for sure what will be the best, career or education for other people. So it's good to give your children or other people, ideas. so that they can make a good informed choice. So a person who is a physician, like Dr. Karella, they can, kids can grow up watching that, and they either can feel like, oh, doctors are very busy, I don't want to be a doctor. So no matter how much pressure you put on them, sometimes they can have their own, negative feelings attached to that, so they may not want to do that. Or they may grow up, seeing their parents or, physicians doing good things, or, so that can inspire them to be doctors when they grow up. So it's good to help them if they are not considering, becoming a certain field. There is this field called engineering, and you can do all these things. Maybe try, taking this course. So it's good to encourage them, to help them think, seriously consider it. But if you restrict them, and it has to be only that field that you want them to study, medicine or engineering, like they say, Asian and African parents, kind of, that's what they want for their kids. Then you're doing harm. They may do that for you, but eventually they will be unhappy. So they may not even be successful in that field, because it's not really coming from within. It's not meeting their passion and their strengths. And so it's good to, tell them about this field that you think will be good for them. Expose them to that. Have them get internship, have them take classes, but even they can do, some courses. But if eventually it has to be their decision, and don't pressure them. Sometimes I think, children feel like if they don't do what their parents want them to do, they are not being approved by them. So it leaves them feeling really sad, or leaves them with a negative feeling about themselves when they don't obey or follow their parents' wishes for them, for their life goals. So it's good to have the collaborative, educational, have them be exposed, but at the end of the day, have them be the one to make that decision.
And I think it's quite important to start early with the children, because I don't know how it is in the US. We have a whole lot of children now that get up to 18, 19-year-olds who don't actually know what to do with their lives, getting a bit mixed up. So I think as a parent, it's very important to start very early and encourage your children. To begin with, you have to accept them whatever they want to do. It's I'm a doctor. None of my kids want to be doctors. They've never even thought about it. And I actually never thought about them being doctors either to begin with, because my older son was always, so what, just as an example, he started playing Minecraft all the time. And I think this is a problem a lot of parents have, the digital trouble that we all have online all the time. And so when he was 10, I think, he's 19 now, I asked him, do you really enjoy what you're doing? He said, yes, I love playing on the computer. So I said, well, great. Start learning about how it's built, how it works, how it functions, how it gets processed. So I got him a teacher to teach him how to do computer sciences, and that's what he's doing now. So become a professional. You love to do what you do. So if you have a child who likes to bake and cook, make them learn that. This is because, a profession or something that you do that you're happy doing with is nothing other than brain cells that grow in your brain that have a certain path. And if you nourish that, and if you teach them, you make them do it well, then that will become what they do later on in life. And then you think, oh, they're talented. They're not. They've been doing it for so long, and they know how to do it. And that becomes something that they can do well. So it's very important to understand that nothing's going to drop from the sky when the kids become 18. That's going to show them this is what they do. If you're lucky, you have children who are very early in life, and very determined children who have an inner voice that tells them what they want to do. But most people are not like that. Yeah. So you can encourage them, give them thought paths. And the same thing is, then we get to the point where we're talking about grown-ups, what they want to do in life is, and that's where I come from, the children. Working with children teaches you and shows you how grown-ups are going to be eventually. If they haven't done that by 18, then they're going to start thinking about what they want to do. And you have a lot of grown-ups working in jobs that they're not happy with. They're not happy, but then you'd ask them, what would you like to do? And they say something else. So what? And they don't know. So I advise them to indulge in a hobby on the side, and do something and build something on the side that they can find out if it could be something for them. So if you're an accountant, you're very unhappy about your job, and you think maybe you want to become a singer, well, usually if you're very mathematical, you want to go into an artistic field, then do that on the side and see on your weekends, or if you want to be a cook, if you want to do a pastry or whatever, or you want to work in whatever, just do that on the side, indulge in that, get the book, study whatever it's involved in, and see if it will work for you. Because everything that you do at the end of the day becomes tedious after a time. It either becomes boring or it becomes hard to do. So that's why you have people work in a certain job after 5 years. And if the brain knows how to do it well, if you don't grow and do new things in this field, you're going to start saying, I want to do something new. Or you build on what you know, you start building on what you have, and you take another new branch. If you're doing, like pediatrics, like I'm doing, you do that same thing day in, day out. Your brain gets tired after a time. So you start writing books, right? And it moves on, and you become a teacher maybe. So you just have to, this is what we call growing. That means giving your brain the space. And especially with children, it's nice to see how they are. It's nice to see what they're interested in. It's very important to accept them the way they are.
Thank you. I think it's very good with what you just said. I mean, having that passion, and it's something that we enjoy something, we want to do it more of it. And it won't feel like an obligation that we have to do, but you'll have the more internal motivation to keep going despite setbacks, despite the stress. We may be tired, but because if we do enjoy it, we might end up having that thrill that makes us come alive and strive to become better at it. And then just like you said, Dr. Karella, the more progress you make, the more confident you become, you'll have to apply it to all other part of your life that feel stagnant. So finding that passion and wanting and loving it, I think there is a saying, it's like, if you do what you love, it's never really considered a job. Something like that, I'm trying to code it. So it's just finding that passion, something that we love, is definitely a good area. So Dr.
One sentence, that the love comes with the doing. You don't do it because you love it. You start to love it when you get good at it. And that's what I think, that's the thing that a lot of people are getting mixed up with. They say, I don't know what I love. I say, you start doing something, the better you get at it. You love it. It gives you the thrill, and it gets better and better on the way. So I think that's maybe something that's important to describe.
That's a good way to look at it. How do, I mean, with the same thing, then I can, Dr. Bikat, if I can ask you this, passion is a big one. So, or just like Dr. Karella said, you just start doing something and then you may end up loving it. And if you don't like it, you may move on. How do you find that passion in you, or what is it that we need to do in order to find that place to get us moving? I think just to build on what just Dr. Karella said.
Mm-hmm. So I think, the first step is, I like the Abraham Maslow's self-actualization theory. This self-actualization theory, I think some of the psychology students, I think most people even taking just psychology as a course are familiar with this theory. It's good to have that in mind. So there are basic needs, He came up with this pyramid type of description of our needs as human beings. So our basic needs are, food, clothes, housing. So our first need as human beings is to meet those needs. Whether we have passion or not, we have a career or not, we have to work and take care of those basic needs because they are basic. Those are about our survival. And then next to that is, safety and security. We have to make sure that we are safe and secure. So with different choices that we make, we have to ensure that we live in a safe place. We are safe in general and secure. Third is our need for belongingness, relationship, love that we talked about earlier. Having relationship, a support system. We want to make sure that we have that around us. And then when you go to number 4 is, esteem or contributing to society, job, feeling a sense of accomplishment. That again, that's a need that we have to fulfill. Even, people like Bill Gates, they have a lot of money. They can, not work. They can sit at home and just enjoy their life, travel, but they still work. Why? Because there is that need in us to be contributing, be working, achieving something doing something with our mind, with our life. And then the last step is, they call it self-fulfillment. The self-actualization phase is when we feel satisfied completely. We're comfortable with where we are in different areas of our life, and we are at a point where we actually can give and impact others. And so when we think about career, we can think of all of those things. It's not just surviving, but finding things that when you have a certain career, you have a sense of belonging to with that community. You find a career gives you, financial stability, that give you more peace. It helps you emotionally. It helps you with your needs, physical needs. It helps your, social relationships, and then you can do charity and give to others. So career and employment, jobs, having something that an income to support ourselves, it's so core for individuals. And so making sure that whatever the field is or whatever you're doing is really a good fit for you, knowing you may not always do what you want, like Dr. Karella said. You may not always, in Ethiopia, you don't get placed, for example, in the field that you want. You might want to study engineering, and they might place you in chemistry. Its life may not always present you exactly what you want to do, but even within that field, you find something that is a good fit for you, or that within that broad field you can find passion. So it's good to think about fulfillment, not just this. We say a job is not necessarily a hobby, right? A job is work, and it may not always feel good, no matter field that we choose, but figuring out a way to make that field enjoyable, or maybe finding a job that you're doing the same thing, but the job setting, the work environment is different, that's comfortable for you. So just being very creative in looking at what is my passion, and then how can impact other people. And that sense of reward and fulfillment, it's also important. You get something done, when you help someone else, it gives you a lot of joy. It could be that your career is raising your kids, so you want to be a stay-home mom, and that you want to do that while you don't want to work. You're comfortable with one income, your spouse is working. That's okay, but doing that fully, with a lot of diligence, in maybe you participate with in other parenting activities where you're giving back or impacting other parents and teaching, volunteering. But if that is your passion, you do it fully, without comparing yourself to other people or feeling bad for the choices that you made, but fully being committed to that field or choice that you have as a full-time commitment, and doing that really well, I think, is a source of joy as well.
Thank you very much for that description. Before I go to Dr. Karella, thank you for the people who are commenting and asking questions. We will come to your questions shortly. Please share and comment. Keep having those questions coming. Dr. Karella, there is this, you mentioned it at the beginning, like I think when we talked about it, it's like the three-legged chair, health, well-being, and success. If you can describe a little bit on that, what does that mean, and how it affects people. So if you can talk a little bit more about that, please.
So apart from being a pediatrician, I grew because I did a course I did a new field that I've indulged in. It's called mind-body medicine, which is quite interesting, and it's actually very helpful in my work, because even though we're pediatricians, we have more and more issues that deal with parents and deal with stress and deal with everyday stressful life with children, which is not always easy. So I thought, just to kind of help people, and that was the main topic of my TED Talk, I developed a thing that I call the beneficial thinking method, which actually just teaches us, and this helps us also to grow and to get us out of our stress mode. And it more or less explains how the brain is made. And I might just show you a little picture that I have that it's in my book. You have this brain stem, you have the middle brain, and you have the cortex out there, the prefrontal cortex, which I made as a house. Yes, I call it, yes, the beneficial thinking house. And so what you have to understand is this is like Paul MacLean described this in the 60s, and it's quite an old methodology, but I made a new one out of it, and I just made it a house. So if you can imagine, you have a thought, and a lot of things that we think of are actually quite negative. When we think about work, we think about why it doesn't work. We don't think about why it could work. When we think about friends, we think about what they said that make us upset and not what they did to us that makes us happy. When we think about a lot of things, we have a habit that we have developed as human beings, which push us into a negative attitude about life. We think about how terrible things are. So we actually make a culture of it. When we get together, we say, did you hear about what she said? And the other one says, oh yeah, that was really bad. We say, did you, we kind of nurture. Beginning, it makes us feel a bit better, and the other way, it makes other people worse, though we have a better position. But that's a stress situation. So we have a stress situation, which is at the base of the brain, which would be down here. You see the crocodile, and then you have the midbrain, which is where you have your emotions, and the top brain that you think with, prefrontal cortex. So what you have to remember is if you are in a stress mode, if you're thinking in a negative way, your thoughts are not the right thoughts that you have, you are not going to reach the top level of your head, which is going to show you where to go to. And to get there, the place in the middle, the emotions, that means the love, the care, the feeling of well-being is essential for you to get to the solution of your problems or the growth or whatever it is that's going to make you what you are, a human being. So we tend to fight with each other. We tend to be upset at each other. And what it does with us, it brings us in a flight or fight mode, which is absolutely a useless thing for life. Absolutely nothing that we can use with it. We can't get anywhere with it. And it's okay if you have let's say you have some danger that's really a life dangerous moment, a threatening moment that you have, then you get into the stress mode, which is important. You cannot live without the stress mode. So I made, in this methodology, I said there's something we call an amygdala that you probably know, you learn about, and that's your job, Dr. Bikat, and we call it in my beneficial thinking house. That's Lady Amy, who sits on the sofa with the hippocampus, that's our memory. I call that the seahorse. And the two of them are more or less, they rule our world. So everything that we see, hear, or think about lands somewhere or somehow at Amy. Amy decides whether it's something that's going to stress us or something that's harmless. So that things that stress us in life usually are not stressful for others, maybe. So we have a kind of value system in our thought path where we assume a lot of things are stressful, and which sends us into this fight or flight mode. We feel bad, we feel stressed, because the thought is what makes, and you said that at the very beginning of the thought, you said what we think. Dr. Bikat said that. What we think is what's going to eventually get us to where we get to. So I always say, clean your thoughts, clean your thought path. Don't think about bad things, think about good things. That's the only way you're going to get up to your cortex. That's going to get you to where you want to get to. The stress system is important if you have something that's life-threatening. And I think we take the picture away now because I can just talk about it. So you can see this idea. And what you said about human relationships is in the mid-floor. You can see this little fairy with all these, plants. And I considered, I had to explain this to my patients. I said, you know what? You have plants in your brain that produce dopamine and serotonin that make you happy. So if you want to be happy, you have to do something about it. So we tend to always think about work. We think about things that we have to do, but we forget to do things that make us feel good. That means you have to be nice to yourself. So define that. What is it that you have in life that makes you feel better? Because the more you do that, the less stressed you get, because the more the fairy is active, the less Amy, Madam Amy, who's in this, who represents our amygdala, the more quiet she is. So one important thing that's very important that we should all know is that human love and human care de-stresses us. it makes us feel good, and it makes Amy quiet. And I have an elevator in the house, and I always, in the book, I write how this elevator moves up and down, and how we have this small moment to decide in which direction this elevator goes. Let's say you hear something, or you listen to someone say something and you feel upset, then you can definitely, imagine that Amy has made sure that your elevator goes into your stress system. So you feel upset, you feel bad, and that's because you have an output of adrenaline and cortisol, the stress hormones that make you feel that way. And so at the end of the day, my point is, whether you're from Ethiopia, from China, from India, from wherever, Hungary, whatever, all brains function the same way. But what we have that's different is the habits that we learn, the culture that we've learned to think in certain ways, and we've learned to do certain things. But if you adopt the system, like, let's say I want to get a new job, and I think I don't like the job I have, or I want to go and study medicine, I'm not good at it. You'll get there somehow, somewhere, in some form, if you keep on it. But then you have to understand, when you say I can't, it's already a stress system. You say I can. If you say I don't know how to do it, you say I will find a way of doing it. So everything that you say to your body will make sure that you will go in the right direction. Or if you say it's impossible, you can say it is possible, I just have to find a way. And this pushes you forward. So it's an amazingly very simple system that we have in our brains. And I think it will help us if we stop thinking in our very tiny cultural levels, think I'm from here, I'm from there, and these people are like this or they're like that. Human beings are all the same. If you want to connect with them, they like if you're nice to them, if you're kind to them, if you're friendly. You are more attractive if you smile. If you want to go and get a job, you better smile and make sure the person who's going to give you a job is going to feel good about it, because he feels good about it too. So the mirror that you showed is so important. It makes, or we talked about looking at yourself and thinking about your characters. The first thing you have to do is, what stresses me? What is it that's not good in my life? And make a list of it. And think about, what are the things that I don't feel good about? Because if you understand that things you don't feel good about, things that stop you from getting to where you get to, and you have to switch them. I call them switch moment. And there's an amazing scientist called Viktor Frankl, and he was in Auschwitz in prison, and he decided that the minute that there's a small point in life between when things happen to you and when Amy reacts and presses that button, sends you into the stress mode. And this little space is where you have your chance, what makes you a human being. This little space before you react, before you get upset or fight or move on to thinking you're disappointed, and all these negative emotions, you can get away from them with one very simple trick. And that's the trick we call the breathing. If you just breathe for a second, breathe inside and say, what happens is the output of these whole cortisol, adrenaline, stress hormones is a bit lower. And that's what I talk about in my TED talk. It's trying to explain it, but there's going to be a book coming up on it. So what I just want to state and put it all into a simple thing is this. Life is actually not as difficult as it seems. It's just our completely mixed up ideas that we have in our head and the way we grow up that makes things difficult. So if you manage to really avoid these negative thoughts and negative thought paths, and believe that there's one thing that they do for you is that they stop you from thinking. That's it. They put you in a stress mode, stop you from thinking. And I always get this discussion with people, friends. They say, well, I have to be upset. I say, you don't. Someone told you have to. And they say, I'm going to show him. I'm going to show him who I am. So you're not going to show him who you are. You're going to destroy. Fighting, being upset, negative emotions, destroy growing and growth. So the stress system is very, very, very far away from the thinking system. And we have to actually practice thinking much more.
Okay, thank you. So before we go on to the next question, I wanted just to say, please share. A lot of questions are coming up. We're going to address a few, one or two questions, and then we will go to the personal questions that people are asking. So in life, we have like what we call like the 7 areas of our life: spiritual, social, career, relationship, family, personal development, financial, and health. So we want to do a little bit of an example. What does it look like about setting goals? So let's say if we pick career, and for both of you that if I can ask a similar question. So someone wants to change career or improve themselves. What does it look like, Dr. Karella, if I can start with you, and how to set goals? So for people to understand, because there are different methods, different areas on how we can set goals. And then if someone just says like right now, I want to improve my career, what advice or what steps do you think that person should take?
Okay, I'll start with what you asked me for with this chair that I say with 3 legs. First of all, whatever you do in life, there are 3 things you have to think about. You have to be healthy. You have to have a healthy life. It's important to move on, and you have to have a good feeling about life. You have to be, this well-being is important to get to the goal that you get to. If you're not well, you're not going to get there. So what I mean with well-being means mentally have a good feeling about whatever it is, or at least being a well-being. You can be a happy person, but you can also be neutrally fine. So if you're in a stress mode, you're not going to get your goal. That was, by the way, this picture was important. And apart from that, the more stress you have over the long run, you're going to become ill. You're going to get secondary problems that you can't deal with. And in the very, very long run, you're going to get, which is very important, all this, things like blood pressure, things like obesity, people who are stressed eat a lot more. And all these, as a doctor, it's very important for me to talk about stress, because stress is going to make you sick, and it's not going to make you successful. So you have to get out of that stress mode. When you have a goal is just nothing other than something that has to be done that you'd like to get done. So if it's a job you want to change, there's something that's quite interesting that happens to us in our brain, and that's the top floor, I call it. The minute it gets the order which says, I want to do this or I want to do that, amazingly, it kind of gives an algorithm in your brain that makes all your senses be aware of what you want. And this is a fun thing to do. Like, let's say I want to work in the office on that street. Let's say I want to become work in a pharmacy, or I want to become, it's very, whatever it is, I want to do this. And usually when we talk about a profession is a long way to go. So we would start saying, I want to enter that school first, right? Or I want to enter that office. So you have a vision. A vision is a vision of what's going to happen in the end. That's a long road. So you're not going to become a doctor or pharmacist, or you're not going to become a CEO in a day. It takes a while to get there. So, and what stops people is thinking of the quick way of getting there. There's no quick way in life. It always has a procedure. So you are going to say, I want to do this, and I'm going to take this road. And the road is probably not going to be easy, because whatever you want to do in your life, there's always, in the book I wrote in German, I say it's like a golf course. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the game golf. You have like 18 holes that you have to go through until you get to that end of the game. And I call these obstacles in life. It's normal to have obstacles. It's normal to go and fall and get your ball over the hedge or get it hit somewhere else. But what you do is you just go back. So I call it, you put your navigation, when you drive from one place to another, you put an address in that navigation system. Otherwise, you're not going to get there. So if you don't have the address in that system, you're going to start, if I say I want to come visit you guys in Boston, if I don't have an address, I'm going to run around Boston. I said, does somebody know Yoftahe? It's going to take a while to get there. If I have an address, there are things that help me to get there. So this is important. What is it that I want? Define it and put it in your navigation system, and understand that I'm going to have obstacles. So every time you fall, you get up again and you look around and see if you are following that road. And you know what? The navigation system sometimes sends you through a very difficult way. So you centralize it again. And you do not become emotionally upset. You do not get into that cellar. You do not go to that crocodile. You get back up, you find your way to the top brain. So this methodology of the house, it's very easy. It's very simple. So, and I don't think that, everybody has different obstacles that they go through. So it's very difficult to tell people what to do. You can tell them, though, how things work in your brain. So make sure you set a goal and just go for it. It might take you a year. It took me 7 years to write my first book, but I just wanted to get that book done.
Yeah.
And then on the way, when you first, your needs grow too as you get older. You just don't want to have a book. You want it to be successful. So you say, how do you do a bestseller? So there are ways to do things. And people think, well, you'd be lucky you have a book published. No, you want to have it sold. You want to become, you want to have it sold. And then you think maybe you want to have it as a bestseller. So the first time it became a bestseller. The second time I knew. And so you work on it. And amazingly enough, your brain tells your eyes and your ears and your nose and your skin, all your sensory conception would be focused on getting there. And you just kind of are amazed. So you have people say, you know what, I was thinking of doing this and it actually worked. So things do work. And if they don't work, just stand up and think about which direction. Then maybe you're going in the wrong direction. But they do eventually work out.
Thank you. I like that analogy that you just described about the GPS, because I think the first name when something they came out with was something that never lost. So you may put the direction into it to make that you may be facing traffic that
Yes.
might be closed or whatever, but one way or the other, because you know where you need to get to, you may take different path, but you will get from A to B as long as you have that B in mind, that B entered, and you know where you need to get to, you will get the direction. It might be longer, might be sometimes you may have to stop until the traffic is cleared out, but you will get there as long as you know you need to get to B. So thank you for that analogy. Dr. Bikat, let me come back to you in a different way. Same thing as setting a goal. We have this acronym that we use in my work or personal life sometimes, which is called SMART, depending what it is. I think you mentioned that you may end up using the same thing. So if you can describe a little bit how goal setting is. Like I said, this is different. We all have different methods to get to where we need to get, but SMART is one way I think a lot of people do use. And if you can describe a little bit, and then to the audience, please share. I know you're asking a lot of questions. Once Dr. Bikat answered these questions, we will come in and start answering all your questions. So Dr. Bikat, if I can come back to you.
So when we think about the acronym SMART, it's small, or the S is for small or specific. The M is for measurable. A is attainable, R is realistic, and T is for time limited. So many times in what makes achieving a goal difficult for us is because we look at the bigger picture. We don't look at the small steps, the baby steps. So this acronym is to help people make small goals. So this, the SMART, small goals. So let's say, same example, someone wants to get another job, or maybe, consider a different field. They want education, so they want to read a book. They want to read some books to educate them what they should be doing next. So the first step, the small goal is, on one day is to order that book, whatever book that they came up with, or in one day, the small step is to Google that book, or what type of book they should order. Then, one small step is you order that book, because many times, we procrastinate. We have so many responsibilities. Ordering the book can also be a big, task. So you make that happen. And then instead of saying, I'm going to read one book a day, which is not a small goal, it's not realistic, right? It's not attainable if you don't have the goal. And so you say, I'm going to read 3 pages from this book.
Yeah.
So many times the benefit of a small goal is also you start with, you pick up the book thinking you're going to read just 3 pages, but the book is engaging, you enjoy it, so you just keep reading more. And if that happens, that's okay. But the goal that you're going to keep yourself accountable, because you want to evaluate whether you're doing that goal or not. If you set a goal and you don't go back and evaluate and grade yourself, it doesn't help. So you set that goal. Did I read those, 3 pages today? At the end of the day, you want to make sure that you check with yourself. You're kind of achieving those goals that you set for yourself. And then the next day you do 3 pages. So eventually you complete a book. like I said, you might end up being motivated in doing more than the small goals, but you don't want to burden yourself with big goals. You feel discouraged, you feel guilty when you don't do it. So set a small goal, figure out a way to measure that, it's 3 pages is how you measure it. And then you also have time limits. So every day I will do this one, or I will complete one book in 1 month or in 1 week. But that's broad. You want to break it down so that you achieve small things, and then eventually you do big things. Like Dr. Karella was saying, it took her 7 years to write that book, but every month she had to do a portion of that work. Every day she has to do, or every few days, right? So breaking down big things, no matter how overwhelming or giant they look like, if we break it to small steps, we can really achieve things that we want to achieve, our goals.
Thank you, Bikat. I like that. With that, I have in mind one book that I definitely want to recommend for that is Make Your Bed. And then it talks about, I think, the little thing that can change your life. I mean, making a bed seems to be a very small thing. But if we start our day with that one great accomplishment, that I made my bed, and then I can add to it. And then it even says, if nothing else, everything else fell, when I get back home, I'll come back to a well-made bed. So always starting small and building on that. And then another one is The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy that is really very helpful, like doing the little things, and then it does add up to get us to everything. Just like Dr. Bikat said, you may say, I want to read 10 books. Yes, that sounds great, looks great, and it is something we want to talk about, but everything starts by reading that first page. And then just like she said, if we say, I'm going to read 3 pages a day, it's attainable, it's measurable, you know what you did and didn't do. If you didn't read 3 pages, at the end of the day, you did not read 3 pages, so that you can go back and measure on that. So thank you very much for those. So now we're going to go back to answer the questions that we have. I'm going to jump and forwards, and then so that you both of you get a chance to answer some of the questions. And then for the audience, thank you again for being here. Thank you for putting your questions. Please share so that others also can learn on this. So if I miss some of your questions because of time, I apologize. We'll try to get to those in a different time. Let me see where I can get to the first question. First question I'm going to take is going to be from Sam. He's also a psychiatrist. Thank you very much, Sam, for being here. And he has been on the show many times. So his question is, are we naturally lazy, or change is a stubborn thing that we struggle to move? Maybe Dr. Karella can answer this one.
No, I don't like that word lazy. It's something I always try to avoid. I think people are not motivated to get moving on because they probably don't know why. And there's no such thing as being stubborn. And so being lazy is such a bad word to use, especially with children. They have a lack of motivation is the better word to use. And being stubborn is a stubborn thing we struggle to move. What is it? Are we naturally lazy, or change is a stubborn thing we struggle? No, it's not stubborn. It's change is difficult. It's terrible. It's like we talked about that comfort zone. It means your brain cells have to shift. And brain cells don't like to shift. It's work. It's chemical activities that take place. So if you have the proper motivation, the most stubborn person on earth and the most laziest person on earth will get up and get going. And you see that with children, they don't think about walking. There's no such thing as a lazy child. So you're grown up. You were a child at some point, and you still have that in you. So there's no such thing as laziness or stubbornness. It's just that the situation you are in does not either motivate you, so you don't see any reason for doing it, or you have not understood that there is another way of getting to where you are, and you're in a stress mode. That means stress mode. So being stubborn means fighting, means not moving on. And it's like holding your wall if you're stubborn. You say, I'm not doing this, I'm not moving on. It's a kind of a form of fear, actually, being stubborn. It's called fight or flight. So you're in a flight mode if you're stubborn, you're not moving on. So it's nice to understand that. And if you have someone who's stubborn or you think is lazy, find a way to motivate them if they're your children. And you'll find out that very quick. They go very quick when they find something they like to do.
Thank you.
I think, to add to that, self-motivation, I think, is so critical. When you have employers look for, self-motivated individuals, because even though it's natural for us not to be motivated, not to want to change, when you come up with your own way of empowering yourself, you wake up in the morning and you read some quotes, or the kind of things that get you out of that mood when you feel lazy, and knowing those things that can, empower you, encourage you, motivate you, it's so important. For example, after listening to a talk like this, you might go home and want to do things that you haven't done before. You want to go to the gym or apply for a new job. Just having a conversation about like-minded individuals wanting to do something that can really inspire that motivation. But having that system for yourself to self-motivate yourself, to get yourself out of that way. You can read, you can listen to a TED Talk presentation on how to self-motivate myself, or you can do different activities that you can use. I think that can help you be more, overcome procrastination and be more motivated.
Thank you, Dr. Bikat. You just reminded me when we did our program last week, actually on Wednesday, we did a show on the movie called The Bastard, and then certain kind of thing that we have to do. One of the things we talked about was about the media or social media things that we watch. You just said something like this as is informative, productive, and at the end is going to give you an action plan that you have to do something about it. But you go in and listen only to the news or the yelling, fighting with each other. At the end of the day, you just heard something, and there is no self-accountability that you have to put yourself. So that's why we were asking, why was it sometimes popular things are in the news or in the media are like things that are really, when it comes to the bad or the screaming and the yelling part, because there is nothing at the end that you have to do. You just looked at something, just the yelling, the screaming part, and you just comply. But if you learn something new and you learn something that's going to challenge you, you're not willing to change yourself, and you rather avoid those kind of conversations. So I think that takes us to the next question that Ati is asking. Dr. Bikat, if I can ask you this. Ati, thank you for being here and asking this question. The false pretense that life is perfect as portrayed on social media platform has created this unhealthy need to only share the great events. People are afraid to talk about real life events. How do we encourage the society to discuss all topics of life?
So this is a very interesting question, Adi. Social media became part of our lives, and showing the good, the perfect, or seemingly perfect is part of our life now. If we want, individuals to be real and talk about their struggles or their imperfections, it may not be even the place. You don't want your personal struggles, your vulnerabilities out, in the world for everyone, at some point can have access to them. That is really not the venue. That's not the platform. So we do need to have, opportunities for connection, for it could be, private meetings, group, events where people can, practice honesty and share and have opportunities to connect. I think that would be great, but social media is really not the place to be, that vulnerable, that open. I think there is a lot of danger the point that you're bringing up is so important, that we are living in a world where it's people are not fully authentic. You have to, like we said earlier, to conform a certain way of being on social media, and what is being enforced or rewarded is if you put a good picture on social media, everybody is going to love it, you get a lot of social media attention, then people want to keep doing that because there is that encouragement, reinforcement. And it's so our society is right now encouraging this, unreal sense of being part of this system. And, there are a lot of studies on social media and the disadvantages and the harm for emotional health. And I think, individually, we all have to think about, what is the best way of, using social media for learning, for networking, for connecting with other people. But then what are the, potential stressful aspects of it? Because there is a lot of anxiety, especially for teens. There is a lot of concern with social media and this need for being a certain way. They see other kids, behaving a certain way, and it's the globalization. Every culture feels they have to follow this certain culture because they see it promoted on social media. So it's a very challenging time for parents, and I think individually also we have to be very aware of what we see, what we post, what we read. Is it really helping our emotional health? But we also are talking today about how we can, prioritize, have goals, focus on our goals. How much is social media also distracting us? Because, you go on Facebook or Twitter sometimes to check one thing and then you're looking at pictures, or, it's engaging, and they actually work behind the scene to make us stay on social media forever. And they take our valuable time, they take our attention. And so we have to be very cognizant of the dangers this has and the competition with our goals. Social media takes our time, and that time could have spent on these other things that we want to accomplish. So being very mindful of our time and, mindful of time management and the role social media has in this area.
Thank you. Dr. Karella, I'm going to ask you this next question, but you can also give an advice, Dr. Bikat, on this one. What resources would you suggest we read or watch to help us with our personal growth? Unfortunately, Dr. Karella's book is in Germany, she said.
Fortunate. Well, you know what? It depends on what you need, and I must say that we are in an amazingly lucky situation, especially if you live in the US or Germany, where you can order almost any book that you want in any form, but whether it's a Kindle, it's a book, or as an Audible. So I love it. And usually I don't have time to read most of the time, but I do order Audible books because I can hear them in the car. And sometimes it's 10 minutes or 20 minutes. But the resource is, the question is, what is it that you need? So I don't think there's any certain resource that you can read. You can, let's say it depends on what your needs are, and you just put that in Google or in Amazon and ask. And then you can read what the reviews are about that book they're on. Then that's what I do. I personally, I live in a German country and we don't have very many English speaking people in the area that I work with. So I just put in everything I need. I say, how do you do this? And how do you do that? And not that word how. And I just read and get those books. So be open, because sometimes it's quite interesting. They're very well-known people write books and stuff. And then sometimes I find small books, nobody knows about them. If you look at their Amazon reviews, there's not much on them, but I find very interesting things. So be open to information out there, and you can always get a book where you can return it if it's not good. So I think you should just Google it and find out. Personal growth is so many things on the market.
Thank you.
I would add the Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's an older book, but it has a lot of good points that can help you with self-discipline and living, towards a goal. And then another book that I would add is Ben Carson's Gifted Hands. That's a book I read when I first came to this country. Someone, gave it to me, and it's really, especially for teenagers, young adults who are working towards a specific career choices. It's called The Gifted Hands, and maybe Yoftahe can leave that information with a YouTube video, but it's by Dr. Ben Carson, and that's also really very small but very powerful, inspiring, motivational small book.
But Covey's one of the very biggest books, I'd say, in personal development. Covey always has a book called 7 Ways also for Families, that is quite interesting to read that. It's a lovely book. It's wonderful.
Definitely. I'll add to that. The Compound Effect is a great book that helped me a lot in this one. And then The Dream Giver, something that helped me really to realize what our dreams, what's in it. So those 2 books I personally recommend on that one. Thank you, Betty, for always being here and definitely having questions and then participating. I really appreciate you. This quick question that we want to take, if I can ask Dr. Bikat on this one, and then maybe Dr. Karella can add on it, says, I know a girl who had studied marine biology for 2 years based on her parents' advice. She dropped out and changed her field of study. After 4 years of study, she graduated with a degree on event planning with a lot of student loan. She was working night shift for $12 an hour in warehouse. How do we help our children to make them better life decision? Thank you, Katama, for your question. Dr. Bikat, maybe.
So in the US, when you're trying to make a decision about education, definitely student loans or how to afford college education come into the discussion. So there are some specific fields that can be more, profitable once you graduate and you are able to pay back your loans. Like, the field I'm in, you take a lot of student loans, but then it's, it tends to pay it back. Whereas, other fields that you're not sure, if you are in the field like the arts or event planning, it's not guaranteed. It's not a type of career that may not guarantee that you will be able to pay that student loan or the money that you're borrowing back. So it's good to have a really good mindful exploration before your kids decide about their education when it comes to affording college. So I know Dave Ramsey, he's a popular financial counselor. He has a podcast and he's on YouTube. He has books. He has books for teens. And his idea is, don't let your children take student loans to go to college. And for some fields, they might be able to afford working while they're going to school so that they don't get into debt. But for other type of fields, it might be worth taking student loans. So it's good to, just be very well informed, get the resources before deciding, and make sure that if they end up having a student loan, just being very disciplined, like she was doing right now, to be able to get that taken care of, instead of just, putting it off, and eventually becomes more and more and more. So I think this question is more of like a money and financial decision question, and there are resources that I would recommend, Dave Ramsey Ministry or his program has available, even for teens. So I would use that.
Thank you, Katama. Thank you for the audience. Instead of taking more questions, we are coming to the end of our program. I just wanted, so we can sum it up.
Say one thing to the question before, because the question was, how do we make them get a better life decision? And I think what we have to consider here is this child has taken parents' advice, took 2 years in marine, if we're not talking about the financial part of it, took that marine biology course. She dropped out after 2 years and did an event planning, which she finished. So our responsibility as parents is to support her in getting work in this area and to encourage her to find ways of monetizing what she studied and getting a place to work in. It kind of sounded like, well, the poor thing's ended up in a night warehouse working for $12 a night. So these children, even though they're not doing what the parents want from them, and they've ended up doing something else and land a warehouse, I think they need a lot of support, a lot of encouragement, and that's what we're there for as parents. They don't always do what we want them to do, but we have to encourage them what they've done. And event planning, if it's well done, could become a very, very, successful job too. It's just finding out how to get it in the right path. I think that's also very important. I don't think we can decide always for our children. I think they when they grow up, they decide themselves a lot of times.
Thank you. I don't think we can address all the questions today, but and also this is a very heavy topic, but I hope we have given all the audience something to get started from stuck, or even questions where we are evaluate ourselves and what we need to do different. for 2020. So Dr. Bikat and Dr. Karella, I really appreciate you. I learned so much from both of you today. And it's a great honor having both of you in here. And then I'm going to post again Dr. Karella's TEDx just to make sure for people to follow through. But before we end the conversation, one thing I wanted to do is both of you give you a moment just to summarize any general advice or anything that you want to share with the audience. If I start with you, Dr. Bikat. Thank you again for being here. This is not the first time that you've been here, and I'll see you again in February for this show. So I really appreciate that you take the time to be on the program. May the Lord bless you more. So if you can summarize, and thank you for being here.
I want to leave you guys with psychology. I know I talked about a lot of psychological theories, but this might also be helpful. It's called process versus outcome. When you set goals and you evaluate yourself, always evaluate yourself based on what you do, your effort, not necessarily the outcome. So, your goal was to be a very healthy person. You worked hard, exercised, ate healthy. Your weight didn't, you're trying to lose weight. Maybe the weight didn't change, or let's say, you're trying to be healthy all year and you got COVID-19, or you got some kind of health, illness. If you evaluate yourself based on the outcome, you're going to give yourself a failing grade, right? But if you evaluate yourself based on what you did from your side, your discipline, you exercised, you really get an A in your effort. So thinking about, really, did I do what I said I will do, and grade yourself based on that, not necessarily the outcome, because the hope is you get the outcome that you're looking for, but that's not always guaranteed. So it's always think about process and your effort, not necessarily the outcome as your success.
Thank you, Dr. Bikat. I think you just reminded me of a quote that from Dr. Darren Hardy. I think he says, progress equals happiness. He says, that's because reaching a goal is satisfying, but only temporary. Life is not about achieving the goals. Life is about who you become in pursuit of those goals. So how we change through that process and who we become, that's always something that we can take to the bank. But goals can change as we age. If we get sick, other things, our goals will change. As we become parents, our goals, priorities will change. But the process of getting there is who we are, and that's one thing that's going to help us to build further and further. So once again, thank you very much for that advice. Dr. Karella, thank you again from Germany, time difference, all of that, being here. I really appreciate you, and I know how busy you are, and then being able to give us this time. I hope we can read your books one day after they are translated. Also, all of that. And then definitely the TEDx talk has been very helpful for me. That's how I got introduced to you. And then I've been sharing it with people. So thank you for being here. Learned a lot. If you can summarize our time today and what advice that you want to leave to the audience.
Okay, there's one important thing I want to tell everybody who's watching today. And like you said, it's the process of life that makes you what you are today, a human being. So you're very, very special. There's nobody like you out there. You are an exquisite human being with all your failures and your successes. So this is what you start off with today. You're great. You're wonderful. There's nothing wrong with you. And everything that you want to achieve in life and move on is a process that you're going to learn. So you have to start liking yourself if you want to move on. Find the good things in you, and don't consider things to become, don't give the bad things a value. Just give the good things a value. Because like I said, as soon as you start telling yourself you're good, you're wonderful, you don't have to tell yourself you're extra great. Just tell yourself you're good. And this well-being, this feeling of feeling good about yourself will help you to move on. And I think you have to trust life at a certain point, because we can't always know what's going to happen, even though we all have wishes and things that we want to achieve. But trusting life and believing that you are a good person will make you become what you want to be.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the audience. Once again, please share. Dr. Karella, Dr. Bikat, I really appreciate you. Just to sum it up, what I want to say also pretty much what we have learned. The feeling of being satisfied or unsatisfied with one life is a very, very personal experience happiness. My happiness is different from others. My success is different from others. And it's how we measure it depends on our individual histories, personalities, and past. So just make sure to find that who you are at that self, and appreciating, just like Dr. Bikat and also Dr. Karella said. This is why I said the gift that we can give, the mirror, looking at that mirror and having that conversation with that person. And gratitude is the best place to start, I always say. Sometimes we try to achieve so many things in life, but we forget what we have, and we don't value what we already have in our hand. So if we every day we start with some kind of gratitude and appreciating what we have in our life, that's going to help us to get better. That's going to help us to get more as we go on. So once again, thank you very much for being here. We really appreciate you. Thank you for sharing and subscribing to the Yoftahe Show. We're going to bring you more challenging, more questions that to help us move in the right direction. 2020 has been very, very challenging for everyone. And if there's anything coronavirus has showed all of us is how similar we are. One like tiny virus, whatever it is called, wherever it is that we cannot see, touched every single human being that we know of. America could be that powerful arsenal, the tank, the missiles, none of that can go and attack that coronavirus that we are thinking of. So at a level, we can see how deep connection, human connection that we need. A lot of people have said, because of coronavirus, so many restrictions have come in life. Restaurants have been closed. We cannot travel. We have not done ABCD. And then says, I want to do ABCD. I said, the question I ask, before coronavirus, have you done those things? Says no. So all of a sudden, what we think coronavirus is making you stop. Coronavirus will go away one day with the vaccine and everything's going to go. But if we don't change ourselves, whatever we didn't do in 2019 because of me, I still carrying that. So coronavirus might have given me a perspective to say, I want to do this, but I cannot do it because legally I'm being stopped from doing it. But when coronavirus goes away, if I'm still stopping myself from doing the traveling, from exploring, from being with families, all of that, at the end of the day is who and what I choose to be, and then make sure to do that. And all of this, one thing I know we didn't touch, but it's very, very important. There are some people who may suffer through mental issues like depression and other things, and asking for help and asking for professional help is definitely a necessary thing that we have to do. So we didn't dismiss those part. So if you do need help, please make sure to reach out and ask for the help, for the professional help, so that you can enjoy what this is called life. Once again, Dr. Karella, Dr. Bikat, I really appreciate you. The audience, the viewers, I really appreciate you. Please share. I always leave you. We have the tendency of, I said in an Amharic, abro መብላትን እንጂ አብሮ መስራትን አናቅምና አብረን የምንሰራበትን መንገድ እግዚአብሔር ይፍጠርልን። በሀገራችንን ባለ ሁኔታም ደግሞ በተለያዩ ችግር ላይ ስላለን እርስ በርስ በመከባበር አብሮ በመኖርና አብሮ በማደግን ሀገራችንን ማሳደግ የምንችልበት እርስ በርሳችን ማደግ የምንችልበትን ደግሞ አብሮ እግዚአብሔር ይስጠንላለው። በሰላም ዋሉልኝ። ዮፍታሄ ሙላቱ ነኝ። እንደገና በሚቀጥለው Wednesday night 8 p.m. we'll see you, and again, God bless you and have a good day.